In the heart of the Badlands, amidst the whispering winds and rugged canyons, there lay an old forgotten grave labeled by the passage of time. A simple cross reached into the sky, barely recognizable, hinting at the stories buried beneath the soil. Beneath that earth, long gone but never forgotten, was a man named Samuel Kane, a former lawman turned outlaw whose past echoed louder than the howls of the coyotes that roamed the night. Years before, Samuel had bound himself to a promise in silence. In a moment of desperation, he vowed to save his family from the clutches of a corrupt sheriff who ruled with an iron fist. But the vow came at a price, one he never anticipated. The sheriff, a man named Baxter, was brutal and merciless, willing to murder anyone who threatened his control over Silver Creek. On the outskirts of town, Samuel made careful plans with a handful of trusted friends. They spoke in hushed tones, deciding to confront Baxter at the old silver mine where he often hid from the law. As the sun set, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits, Samuel felt the weight of his vow. "I will free us from his tyranny," he whispered to himself, barely able to contain the surge of anger that fueled his determination. The night was thick with tension as Samuel and his friends rode toward the mine. Each horse's breath rose in white clouds against the cool night. A pinprick of fear lodged in Samuel's throat. Was he prepared to spill blood to honor his vow? The moonlight shone bright upon the weathered rocks, and each echoing hoofbeat seemed to call forth the specters of the dead, those who once fought against Baxter's reign. As they approached, Samuel recalled his sister Elizabeth, her laughter bright and infectious, yet now silenced forever by the sheriff's ruthless ambition. It was that laughter, now a distant memory, that ignited a fire in his heart, pushing him forward into the darkness. The thought of her innocence, taken by a man who believed he was untouchable, urged him on. He had to fight for her sake, for his family's sake. Upon arrival, the mine loomed like a great beast, waiting to swallow those who dared to enter. Shadows flitted between the jagged rocks, quickly revealing themselves as Baxter's men, grim and ready for confrontation. Samuel and his friends tightened grips on their rifles, hearts pounding in synchrony with the drums of war that resonated in the emptiness. "Hold your fire," Samuel commanded as they observed the scene. He counted 5 men, all armed, engaged in a game of poker, oblivious to the intruders lurking against the rock face. Each man had a look of hardened arrogance, unaware of the reckoning that awaited them. With a rush of adrenaline, Samuel devised a plan. If they could create a diversion, they might have a chance of taking them by surprise. He signaled to his friends, then picked up a rock and hurled it into the darkness. It crashed against the mine's entrance, jolting the men upright. A fleeting moment of vulnerability gave Samuel and his friends the edge they needed. "Now!" Samuel shouted, charging forward with his gang. Chaos erupted, shouts mingling with the crack of gunfire. A life fought for, a promise made, began to find its ground in blood-soaked soil. Samuel dipped and dodged as bullets whizzed past him, focused only on Baxter, who had scrambled to join the fray. There was no turning back now. He could feel the weight of destiny upon him. The fight was brutal. Blood was spilled, lives shattered amid the raucous noise. Samuel felt every shot that rang out, a reminder of his vow. He encountered one of Baxter's men head-on, strength coursing through him like a river. The man fell beneath Samuel's fury, but the taste of victory was bitter. It was tainted with the knowledge that one life had swapped for another, a life he could not save. With a torrent of rage, Samuel finally confronted Baxter, who stood back, a snarl twisting his lips. "How think you can take me down, Kane? Your little friends won't save you now." The sheriff's bravado shone through the dust and chaos of battle, but Samuel felt neither fear nor doubt anymore. He had long overcome those. "For Elizabeth!" he roared, charging forward. The 2 men clashed, fists flying in a vicious dance. Samuel's heart pounded in his ears like a war drum, powerful and relentless. Every blow was infused with the memories of those lost to corruption, the laughter, the love, the dreams that had been extinguished. As the sun began to rise, casting a wash of golden light over the blood-stained earth, Samuel found the strength to overpower Baxter. A final blow sent the corrupt sheriff sprawling to the ground, breathing ragged and shallow. But even in victory, Samuel felt the weight of his soul dragging him lower. Had the vow truly set him free, or had it merely buried him under guilt and grief? When peace returned to Silver Creek, the town was left to heal from the scars of battle. Yet Samuel's heart remained restless. The promise he made in silence echoed within him, a reminder of the cost of freedom. It was an unending cycle. Each life saved came with blood on his hands, and each burden grew heavier over time. Thus Samuel Cain, the man who stood up against tyranny, felt a freedom that was both a blessing and a curse. He wandered the Wild West, searching for a way to lay his promise to rest. In the depths of his mind, he knew the truth. Freedom could exist alongside chains, and sometimes the most profound vows were not made in words, but buried in the bones of those we've lost. As the Badlands stretched endlessly around him, Samuel's journey would continue, a testament not merely to the battle fought, but to the quiet vows that shaped men's destinies. They would remain buried deep, waiting for a time when he would finally understand their weight, and perhaps find his true freedom. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows on the dusty trails of Silver Creek. Samuel Cain, feeling the weight of his past, mounted his horse, a sturdy beast named Rusty, and set off toward the horizon. The Wild West stretched out before him, a vast expanse of untamed beauty that both thrilled and frightened him. Each mile brought memories, some of warmth from the laughter of those he loved, others cold and stark, echoing the pain of loss. As he rode, Samuel's mind replayed the events of the previous night. The battle at the mine, the clash with Baxter, the cries of the wounded. Freeing Silver Creek from tyranny was a worthy cause, yet the bodies left in the dust haunted him. Each face was a reminder that his promise, once a bold declaration of freedom, had morphed into a relentless echo taunting him in the silence. "Is it worth it?" he muttered to himself, the wind carrying his words away into the distance. The landscape around him, inhospitable and beautiful, offered no answers, only the barren brush swaying gently, as if in reflection of his turmoil. Suddenly, a figure emerged on the trail ahead, silhouetted against the midday sun. As Samuel drew closer, he could see it was a woman, her long hair flowing like a river of gold, and a sun-kissed complexion that spoke of hours spent under the vast sky. She was perched upon a striking chestnut mare, her expression resolute yet curious. "Who goes there?" she called out, her voice firm yet melodic, challenging the silence of the land. Samuel slowed his horse, his instincts sharpened. In this world, strangers could either be allies or foes. "Samuel Cain," he replied, keeping his tone measured. "Just passing through." The woman studied him with piercing green eyes, assessing him. "I'm Clara McCullen. You don't look like the type to just pass through this part of the Badlands. What gives you that impression?" He quirked an eyebrow, intrigued by her bravado. "Your face carries the marks of a man who's seen more than his fair share of trouble, and trouble usually finds you here." Samuel nodded, unwilling to dive deep into the darkness that followed him. "You could say I've had my fill of it lately." Clara dismounted and approached, her movements as fluid and graceful as the breeze. "I know these lands better than most. If you're looking for redemption, you might want to steer clear of the settlement ahead. Not everyone is as forgiving as the winds." The curiosity in her voice sparked something in Samuel, a flicker of intrigue mingled with the kindling of hope. "What do you mean?" "Word spreads fast. After the battle, Baxter's men are more restless than ever. They're searching for you. They lost good men, and they'll come to collect." Her words held a weight Samuel understood all too well. "Then I'll keep moving," he said, his voice steeling. "I'm not looking for trouble, but it seems to find me regardless. Running won't solve anything. You can't run from the past, Samuel. Not forever." He hesitated, feeling the familiar tug of despair. Clara looked at him with an intensity that made him feel seen, not just as a fugitive, but as a man burdened by his own choices. "What if I told you that there's a way to confront this darkness without shedding more blood?" she asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "What do you propose?" Samuel asked, intrigued. She leaned closer, her breath catching the subtle scent of wild sage. "There's a lawman in the hills, out of sight from the settlement. He's more interested in justice than revenge, a rare breed around these parts. If anyone can find a way to turn the tides, it's him." "And you trust this lawman?" Samuel was skeptical, but a flicker of hope ignited within him. "Trust is earned, not given," she replied resolutely. "I've been fighting the corrupt for years. This man carries his own scars and knows the price of vengeance." After a moment of contemplation, Samuel felt himself surrendering to the possibility. Lead the way. As they set off together, an unspoken bond began to form between them, a shared understanding of the burdens they bore. Clara spoke of her life in the Badlands, her dreams of making a difference, of what it meant to stand for justice in a lawless land. Samuel shared snippets of his past, careful to keep the darkest shadows at bay. They rode for hours, the landscape changing gradually from the open plains to the rugged hillocks of the hinterlands. Samuel's heart raced at the thought of facing another confrontation, but the determination in Clara's gaze fueled his resolve. When they finally reached the lawman's modest cabin, it overlooked a valley where rolling hills cradled a hidden creek. The sun dipped low, casting hues of orange and purple over the horizon, transforming the landscape into a living painting. A figure emerged from the cabin, tall and rugged, a weather-beaten man with a brooding presence. His name was Eli Warren, known across the Badlands as a man who walked the line between justice and survival. "What brings you two to my neck of the woods?" Eli asked, suspicion lacing his tone. "Samuel Kane," Samuel introduced himself, offering a firm handshake. "We seek your help." Eli narrowed his eyes, assessing him. "I've heard about you, heard you rid Silver Creek of Baxter, but I also know the blood calls for blood." "There's a way to stop this before it spirals out of control," Clara interjected. "Together we can find a resolution without more violence." Eli studied her, then glanced at Samuel, who felt the weight of the man's scrutiny. "And you think I'm willing to risk my life on a promise?" "The promise of keeping more innocent blood from staining this land," Samuel replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "For every soul lost, there lies a heavier burden on the living." Eli sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "You've been through hell, and I can see it in your eyes. But a promise, even one made in silence, holds no weight without the will to see it through." A moment of silence lingered between them, thick with the gravity of their situation. Finally, Eli sighed again, the heaviness of responsibility lingering in the air. "I'll hear what you have to propose, but understand this. I won't get involved unless we can ensure peace. Otherwise, we're just prolonging the inevitable." Samuel nodded, the path ahead uncertain but faintly illuminated by flickers of hope. The vow he had made echoing in his mind, intertwining with Clara's vision for a future unblemished by revenge. Perhaps together they could navigate the shadows of their choices and find something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. As they sat down to discuss strategies that evening, the stars blinked to life in the darkening sky, witnessing the birth of plans that aimed to disrupt the cycle of violence. Samuel felt a stirring deep within, a sense of purpose that had long eluded him. The combination of their strengths might just create a lifeline to a future where freedom didn't have to mean chains. The night wrapped around them like a thick cloak as they settled by the warmth of the fire outside Eli Warren's cabin. The flames flickered high, casting long shadows that danced on the surrounding rocks. Samuel Kane felt a renewed determination wash over him as he realized he might finally have allies, the very essence of hope amidst the chaos they all endured. Eli leaned closer to the fire, the crackling embers a comforting sound amidst the tension-filled air. "All right, Samuel, if we're going to end this cycle, tell me your plan," he prompted, his voice steady yet cautious. Samuel took a moment to gather his thoughts, heart racing as he laid out what little he had devised. "We need to confront the men who are left, the ones still loyal to Baxter. They'll be seeking revenge, and if we show them we're willing to settle this with words instead of weapons, we might stand a chance." Clara, resting her chin on her hands, nodded thoughtfully. "We can gather the townsfolk, maybe hold a meeting in Silver Creek. Show them that there's another way forward, one that doesn't involve more violence." Eli's brow furrowed as he considered this. "You think they'll listen? Baxter put fear into every heart in that town. It'll take more than words to overcome that." Samuel leaned in, conviction pouring from his voice. "It's a risk, yes, but what choice do we have? They're lost in their nightmare while Baxter's gone. If we don't act now, the next sheriff will be equally corrupt, and the cycle will continue." Eli contemplated this for a long moment, before rising and pacing the ground around the fire. "I've seen too many good men die for this land, and I'm sick of seeing good people fearing phantoms." He stopped, locking eyes with Samuel. "Let's do this, but we'll need to be strategic. We can't rush into Silver Creek waving a white flag. What do you suggest? Samuel asked, feeling the tension ease slightly. Eli responded, We'll reach out to the leading families. The ones who've suffered under Baxter's tyranny too. With their support we can gather a larger crowd. If they stand beside you, it'll send a clear message. This isn't just about you or Clara, but about the entire town reclaiming their dignity. A flicker of hope ignited within Samuel as he weighed Eli's words. You're right. If the prominent families stand with us, it'll have more weight. Together, we form a powerful front. Clara grinned, excitement sparking in her gaze. I can reach out to my father. He's respected among the townsfolk and has influence. Good, we'll split our efforts. Clara, you gather the support of families while Eli and I prepare for the meeting, Samuel said decisively. The fire crackled lower, yet the warmth between the three grew. A sense of purpose filled their hearts. As they formulated plans to meet the families in Silver Creek, Samuel felt a stir in his chest, a feeling of unity that he had longed for since the night he vowed to confront Baxter. As dawn broke the next day, Samuel and Eli set off towards Silver Creek. Clara rode ahead to meet her father, ensuring he was prepared for the wave of emotions and tensions that were sure to arise. The town sat nestled in the valley, a picturesque scene that belied the turmoil beneath the surface. Riding into town, Samuel felt a rush of memories flood his mind, children laughing, merchants shouting as they sold their wares, and families gathering. Yet beneath it all lay echoes of fear and resentment, woven tightly into the fibers of every interaction. Samuel dismounted outside the old town hall, a weathered structure that stood witness to countless town gatherings. The townsfolk could be seen trickling in, their expressions hollow, marked by the experiences of their past. Samuel felt the weight of their eyes upon him, the thrill of the unknown mingling with the fog of doubt. Eli stood by his side, observing the crowd with a calculating gaze. "You ready for this, Cain?" he asked, his voice low. Samuel nodded, his pulse quickening. "As ready as I'll ever be." As Clara approached, her father, an imposing figure with a strong presence, followed closely behind, confusion etched across his brow. "Clara? What's going on?" "Father, we need to talk." "About Samuel and the way forward for Silver Creek," she said, urgency lacing her tone. The crowd began to murmur, weighing the implications of their meeting. Samuel stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the thrumming voices. "Thank you all for gathering. I know there's been fear and pain since Baxter's reign, and I want to acknowledge that pain." A weighty silence fell over the crowd, and Samuel pressed on. "I did what I thought was right when I confronted Baxter, but I didn't think about the consequences. We need to come together, to rebuild and protect our lives. We can't allow another tyrant to rise in his place." As he spoke, he felt Eli's steady presence behind him, bolstering his confidence. "I know I'm not without blame." He took a breath, heart pounding in his chest. "But I ask for your forgiveness and your support. Let's find a way to ensure that everyone can live without fear in their hearts." Whispers ebbed and flowed through the gathering, and Samuel could feel skepticism hanging in the air like a thick fog. Clara's father stepped forward, his voice deep and commanding. "Samuel, trusting you again won't come easy. Baxter had us under his thumb for far too long." "Then let's not repeat that cycle," Samuel urged. "Let's make a pact, all of us, to stand together against oppression. We owe it to ourselves to create a community where justice prevails." Suddenly an angry voice rang out from the crowd. "And what of those who followed Baxter? Can we trust you not to retaliate against the ones who have been manipulated? I don't seek to harm anyone. I want to work with those willing to lay down arms and join us in rebuilding this community. No more bloodshed, but only a united front can give us strength," Samuel replied, feeling the heaviness of their doubt. Eli stepped in, his voice a solid anchor. "Samuel speaks the truth. We don't want this town to drown in a sea of blood. We want justice and understanding. We can choose a path that leads us away from vengeance." The murmurs grew louder, uncertainty refracting like light in the crowd. Yet, Samuel noticed a shifting in expressions, some faces softening, hope creeping back in like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Let's invite anyone who wants to speak," Clara suggested, her voice ringing out above the growing tension. "Let's do this together. If we can't trust one another now, when will we?" In the heart of Silver Creek, a tentative agreement formed. Samuel glanced at Eli, whose eyes reflected a flicker of approval. As Clara began to call for volunteers to share their thoughts, Samuel felt an electric tension in the air, a sense of possibility that they might genuinely weave together their futures. And as each story unfolded, with tales of loss, heartache, and the thirst for justice, Samuel realized their hearts were beginning to heal together. Though the path was long and fraught with difficulty, the bonds they forged that day anchored them to a shared purpose, one that wouldn't bend to the weight of vengeance, but instead rose resilient like the dawn. In the heart of the Badlands, under the embrace of the vast sky, hope began to bloom once more in a land once wrought with chaos. Samuel didn't know what lay ahead, but at that moment he felt that perhaps the vow buried deep within his bones would finally guide him toward freedom. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an amber glow over Silver Creek, Samuel Kane felt a strange mixture of hope and trepidation. The gathering continued, voices rising and falling as stories intertwined. Tension hung in the air like the humidity before a storm, but beneath it, a current of camaraderie began to flow as the townsfolk shared their fears and aspirations. Clara stood beside Samuel, her gaze unwavering as she encouraged those willing to speak, to share their truths. Several townsfolk stepped forward, a mother with a trembling voice, a miner with grit lining his features, and an old prospector whose stories mirrored the history of Silver Creek. "I lost my son to Baxter's men," the mother said, tears glistening in her eyes. "He was just trying to do right by this town." Her voice wavered, and Samuel saw the pain etched into every line of her face. "I want justice, not more bloodshed. Can we truly trust you?" Samuel stepped forward, feeling the weight of her accusation. "You have every reason to doubt me, and I can't erase your pain. But I'm here today not to lead, but to stand with you. Together we can ensure that what happened to your son never happens again. Trust takes time, and I'm willing to earn it." The murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, their expressions shifting from hardened skepticism to cautious hope. Clara's father nodded, encouraging others to speak as well, guiding the discourse toward unity. Hours passed, and as twilight settled in, the group began to coalesce around the notion of rebuilding their community. Samuel could feel momentum gathering, a force as strong as the winds that swept through the Badlands. This was no longer just about him, or even Baxter. It was a mission that encompassed them all. "Let's form a committee," Clara suggested, her eyes sparkling with determination. "We can gather to discuss what steps to take next, hold meetings, and ensure everyone has a voice." "I'll lend my strength," said Eli, stepping into the circle. "But I also carry the scars of this land, and I won't shy from the truth. Conflict is inevitable. What matters, though, is how we confront it." "Agreed," another voice called from the crowd, an older man named McGregor who had lived in the area long before Baxter seized power. "We need a plan, a real one, and once we get it started, we can ensure no one turns against their neighbor in revenge. We can't afford that, not again." Samuel felt a wave of gratitude wash over him for the support. "Our first steps must be clear. We will gather information on any remaining threats. Collector of debts like Baxter won't just disappear, and we have to navigate this carefully. We must be proactive, not reactive." One by one, they chipped in with ideas, their collective energy amplifying as plans took shape. As the night deepened, they forged a pact, a commitment to work together and lend their strengths. Just as they finalized their plans, a sudden hush settled over the gathering. A shadow loomed at the edge of the firelight, an unmistakable presence that sent a chill through the crowd. It was Baxter's right-hand man, a figure cloaked in night, his silhouette bold against the darker backdrop of the Badlands. "What's this? A gathering of traitors hatching plots," he called out, venom dripping from his words. Samuel stepped forward, heart racing, ready to confront the looming threat. "We're not afraid of you anymore." "Liar," Baxter's man spat, taking a step closer as others tensed around him. "You've put your lives on the line, and I'm here to remind you of the price of betrayal." "Betrayal," Samuel replied, his voice steadying as he reached deep for resolve. "You've been the one betraying the very spirit of this town, holding it hostage under fear and violence." The man's eyes narrowed, a predator sizing up his prey. "You think your little assembly here will change things? Baxter will not let you go without a fight. He knows you're here, and he'll hunt you down, one by one, until he gets what he wants. With that, he turned and melted back into the darkness, leaving an air of dread hanging heavily over the gathering. The crowd murmured anxiously, fear creeping back into their hearts. "Don't let him rattle you," Clara urged, standing firm beside Samuel. "This is our chance to stand together. We've survived so far, we can resist him united." "He's right about one thing, though," Samuel said, his brows knitted together in thought. "Baxter won't stop until he sees us all buried under the weight of his vengeance. We need to leave no room for doubt or hesitation." Eli clapped his hands together. "Let's not waste time. We'll need scouts and lookout posts. We must know what Baxter is planning. If he's coming, we need to be ready, not just for ourselves, but for everyone here." A renewed energy surged through Samuel as he addressed the crowd once more. "This is our town, our lives. Together we can face whatever comes, whether it be Baxter or any other threat. We owe it to our families and to those we've lost." After the initial confusion faded, the townsfolk began to rally. They organized into groups ready to sharpen their skills and fortify their homes. Clara worked diligently by Samuel's side, her strength shining bright as she encouraged their neighbors to take up arms, not as aggressors, but as protectors. As night deepened, Samuel stood to the side, observing the determined faces of his fellow townsfolk as they set to work, hammering together makeshift barricades and preparing supplies to defend against whatever Baxter might unleash. The fire crackled warmly, and amidst the shadows Samuel felt a sense of purpose awaken in him, a desire not only to protect, but to transform the landscape of fear that had gripped Silver Creek for far too long. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly, the spirit of unity tying them together like the cord of a bowstring drawn taut. Samuel led scouting parties while Clara continued to secure support from influential families in the area. Eli took charge of training the volunteers, teaching them about rifles and self-defense, weaving in morals of justice and compassion. With every sunset that graced Silver Creek, Samuel witnessed hope rekindled, but the threat of Baxter loomed like a storm on the horizon. Yet he refused to relent. He felt the silent oath he made in the depths of his being, rising above guilt and sorrow, guiding him toward an uncertain destiny. As tension grew, the air thickened with urgency. Yet for the first time Samuel felt the weight lift slightly. This incredible bond, forged from their shared pain, gave rise to a sense of purpose that shimmered in the depths of their collective spirit. And as he stood before the assembled townsfolk one last time, ready to address them before dawn's inevitable approach, he finally understood. Sometimes it takes a vow made in silence, buried deep within the heart, to inspire an entire community to rise together against the darkness. Today in Silver Creek that vow was taking shape, and a brighter path glimmered ahead for those brave enough to walk it.